The definition of landscape painting is a depiction of natural scenery in art. Landscape paintings may capture mountains, valleys, bodies of water, fields, forests, and coasts, and may or may not include man-made structures such as people. Although paintings from the earliest and ancient classical periods included natural scenic elements, landscape as an independent genre did not emerge in the Western tradition until the Renaissance in the 16th century. In this video, we will look at 3 paintings of the early 16th century to give us an early rendition of what early landscapes look like and how these paintings influenced other artists to depict nature or their subject matter. These paintings include from artists such as Albert Bierstadt from Germany, Annabelle Carracci from Italy, and Netherlands artist Joachim Patnier. This video will also cover how each artist used their styles to depict the subject matter and the importance to the people of that time period, and how landscapes was shown in the influence in other works in the future. But before we do all this, we can look at the setting, which was looking back into the history of the geographical area of the period of the northern life in the 16th and 15th century. We see a rise in capitalism and a developing middle class, and there was a creation of modern nation states and the upheaval of Protestant Reformation. At the time, the artists respected traditional art, yet for artists, an innovation of equally far-reaching importance was the perfection of oil paints in the Netherlands, which included new techniques and new styles, and in Low Countries, which allowed northern painters to depict these in the world with unprecedented precision. In the history of landscape art, the Greeks and Romans in the ancient times would paint or draw what was called the gardenscapes. And after the fall of Rome, the popularity or tradition of depicting landscapes declined. From there, landscapes were only used as backgrounds for religious or figural scenes. Yet, it was sparked once again during the Renaissance period, where at times it became the subject. We could look at the term landscape. It comes from the Dutch term landschap, which means region or tract of lines, and the artist's connotation came in the 1500s in northern Netherlands. The birth of the classical landscape came to be in the early 1700s, which was influenced by classical antiquity and the need to depict similar scenes, such as Arcadia, a legendary Greek place. Landscapes were classically meant to touch on the principles of design, such as harmony, balance, rhythm, movement, emphasis, and scale in a picture plane.
In the Netherlands during the 16th century, painters began to show interest in secular elements such as landscape, images of everyday life, and still life. Landscape of St. Jerome by Flemish Renaissance painter Joachim Patnier is an example of one of these landscape paintings. It shows the saint underneath a cave within a wooden shack removing a thorn from a lion's paw. This is a scene from his life that he is often shown in. Next to him is also a cross and a skull, which is an example of memento mori, or a reminder of death. The landscape itself is dramatic and highly detailed, with green hills, trees, and jagged peaks of stone. The painting's high detail and clarity is typical of early arts from the Netherlands, since artists during this time had a greater interest towards a more natural look. The view of the landscape is seen from a high vantage point, and unlike later paintings, there is no use of linear perspective, making the image inconsistent. Objects in the background seem to fade away with the use of atmospheric perspective. Since the horizon line is raised, there is more focus on the land instead of the sky. The image can be split into separate parts, where on one side there is a display of nature with animals running in the hills, and on the other there is a depiction of everyday life with houses and people walking together throughout the land. While this painting keeps traits from the medieval period, it blends them together with elements of early Northern Renaissance art and helps create an image that would be influential to other artists in the genre of landscape painting.
We are looking at Annabel Carracci's Flight into Egypt, painted in 1603 to 1604. Carracci was from a family of painters, and he himself was mainly known for his frescoes. So the Flight into Egypt, which is oil on canvas, and this was really quite different than most of his paintings. Annibale's family started an art academy near Bologna. They opened the art academy with the notion that art can be taught. And even though Carracci was not a landscape painter, he is still able to capture the moment in this scene, typical of Baroque style art. Also very common with Italian Baroque painters is that religious icons are being depicted. Here in the foreground we have Mary with baby Jesus and Joseph on their way to Egypt. Now the three are depicted traveling, but are not the main focus of the actual painting. The landscape actually takes precedence over the narrative, which is something we see similar to the northern painter Pinatar, our first painting. The trio are set in front of the viewer, but are scaled down to give this painting a larger-than-life feel. The landscape is painted in a very naturalistic style and gives the viewer the feeling as if they were actually on the road with the travelers. We see examples of classical style architecture, everyday life to the common people, such as shepherds with their flocks, caravans of camels, and rolling hills that take the viewer all the way back to the distancing mountains. Now, linear perspective was something common in Italian painting, but in this painting, Carracci doesn't use linear perspective. He actually uses chiaroscuro in order to achieve the effect of depth in this painting. A dark foreground and a very light background help give the illusion of distance in this painting. It's very opposite of the popular tenebrism style painting that was happening during this time. This is a key painting during its time, being that it didn't follow any of the traditional Italian methods being used at the time. More of a Northern European trend, almost a century before. Carracci was a trailblazer likened to Caravaggio and doing his own thing at this time. While this landscape is very different than most of the paintings being done by Italian Baroque artists at the time, which were mainly depicting religious iconography, being that the Catholic Church was the main commissioners for these paintings. Religious iconography, the capturing of a moment, the using of light and dark, extreme naturalism, these are all things very typical of Baroque art, yet we find it in a landscape painting which is not typical of the Baroque era. All these things help Carracci's painting become a key transitionary piece during this time.
Among the Sierra Nevada mountains, California, Albert Bierstadt, 1868. Albert Bierstadt was born in Germany, and at the age of 2, he moved with his family to Massachusetts. Bierstadt traveled a lot between Europe and the US. It was during these trips that Bierstadt was motivated to paint these scenes from nature for people in the East. Bierstadt's paintings are a combination of European and American styles. The normal subject matter during 19th century Europe consisted mainly of historical events. Bierstadt painted American subject matter of landscapes and still life with German style. Albert Bierstadt was an artist known for his beautiful paintings of American landscapes. In 1868, he created Among the Sierra Nevada Mountains, California, which was shown in Europe before being shipped to the United States, and was actually painted in Europe as well. This is a scenic canvas oil painting on display at the National Museum of American Art in Washington, D.C. This painting is approximately 6 by 10 feet in size. The painting is typical of Bierstadt with its romantic, exaggerated, idealized view of Western America. Waterfalls flow into a small lake, barely showing any movement from the current. This allows for the reflection of the scenery upon it. The lighting is the most important element that provides a feeling of peacefulness. The sun's rays burst through the clouds, providing warmth. There is a background and a foreground. This provides a sense of atmospheric perspective. Only earthly tones are used in the colors. The foreground has a very smooth texture, and it gets rougher as the eyes move upward. The use of chiaroscuro to provide dramatic lighting is very present in European paintings of this time. Brushstrokes are barely visible. The surface is smooth in texture, providing a more photographic look. The perspective is designed to draw the viewer into the painting. The trees on the right and the cliffs on the left create a V in the center, which draws the viewer's eyes to the small waterfall in the center. This style is very different from Dutch landscape paintings, in that Dutch paintings from the 17th century were very flat, with open spaces. Landscape paintings developed in Northern Europe during the 16th century. In those paintings, the viewer's eyes move through the painting and doesn't know where to settle, no one focus. Landscape painting during the 16th century could have also been very moody, maybe depicting what it was like on that very day in that town or city. Among the Sierra Nevada Mountains, California, was one of many works that helped to strengthen the idea that America was a promised land during the time when many Europeans were immigrating to the country in search of a better life.
In conclusion, the use of different techniques such as chiaroscuro, atmospheric or linear perspective, and soft blending gave life to landscapes with different emotions such as romance, drama, or harmony. The popularity of northern landscape art in the 16th century paved way to many artists that were influential to art as we see it today. The artists we mentioned such as Bernstadt, Carracci, and Patner did so in a relative way. Landscape painters had the ability and knowledge in capturing life to place the viewers into a scene as if being into the landscape, and the viewer was able to immerse themselves into the painting and fantasize or imagine what it would be like with the use of their techniques. A great example of this that we saw was done by that German artist such as Bernstadt, who gave us a good example how spectacular and sublime landscape paintings really were. They gave the viewer a glimpse into the majesty of the natural world, which he considered the Western world in the United States. He ended up making a construct of an imaginary place to another world. He was able to capture the magic through his constructs of his pure imagination. Although he was criticized for not being topographically correct of the actual landscape, he was praised for the powers of his combinations.